Hey guys, this is Randy. I am doing a little introduction just because I'm going live on my personal Facebook page. Most of the classes that I've been teaching through the little COVID moments in our world, I have been teaching mostly in private. I've been making the links public, but I haven't necessarily been blasting them. Although today's topic, I think, is very broad in its audience. Instead of being specific to real estate, I think it's a lesson for all of us to learn. And that's about counterbalance. And you've probably heard a lot of people speaking on this subject. So you're not going to hear anything necessarily new. And yet my audience may not be somebody else's audience that could get in there. And here we go. Christina, since you chimed in, not too shabby. Don't know how to there you go. See, for those of you who don't know, I cut my own hair last night on Facebook Live because I thought it'd be funny. Mostly I wanted the hair off my ears. So I just did it. Sometimes you just got to do it. All right, let's talk about life balance, guys. I really want to take a check into this idea, and I want to call it counterbalance. And I can't take credit for this. I don't know if the man who I'm going to give credit for can take credit for it, but I'm going to give credit to Gary Keller. He speaks all the time on counterbalance. Balance is a myth. Like, if you really think about it, very rarely in our life, and only for a split, minute seconds, will we ever actually find balance. We will very rarely actually find balance. And for some of us, that's the most significant thing that we could hear, hands down, is to be able to hear and understand that. So it is about balance, guys. So we're going to be talking about counterbalance, okay? I want to go back and say again what I said because some of the people on live didn't catch that. Today we're talking about life counterbalance. And it's really important to understand we're talking about life counterbalance, and it's different than balance. Like I said a second ago, balance is just a myth. There's no time in our lives where we have a true balance. And when we do have true balance, it is only for a minute second. So for some of us, hearing just the idea of counterbalance is going to be significant in our world today, because we believe that everything in some capacity, we should be even keeled, and we should be able to balance business and family to make everybody happy. It's just not true, guys. And you shouldn't be able to put that much pressure on yourself. You shouldn't be looking at your world going, I've got to find a way in which I can truly get into this mode so that everybody that I interact with, everybody that I touch, this is their world. And it's just not true. And so don't put that kind of pressure on yourself. Today, we're going to be talking about counterbalance. And the way we look at counterbalance is this. The way that I visualize it anyways. And I've made a graphic that I'll make sure that all of you get. But when I look at the counterbalance of life, right, I'm going to do a health check in my world. I like to think about it as the circle, because if you think about it, there's nothing more balanced than a circle. A circle is always going to be balanced. It's the same on all sides. It is perfect to an extent. And so this is our measurement for how we want to figure out where our balance is. And so the way that I look about it is physical, okay? And I've got mental. When I think about mental health, I'm really thinking about my personal growth, my personal growth. We've got emotional, okay? Emotional health is a little bit different, right? Emotional health is about where I am, not in my mind growth, in my and consuming materials to be able to make myself better. Emotional growth is about that, like, internalization. It is true emotional. Where are my emotions right now? What am I doing? Am I depressed? Am I happy? Am I sad? Where am I going? Because this is a big piece of the puzzle on how our body reacts. And so there's got to be some emotional side of that. Business. Where's the business? Look at spiritual. And we'll look at family. Okay. Now, here's one of the things I want to look at when I'm looking at this. I want to define what each of these look like, right? I may have went through too fast. Physical health, that should be pretty simple. But physical health is much more than how does this look? How's it feel? How's it acting? It is a measurement of can I do, right? There's a measurement of can I do when I consider the physical side of things. And it is about getting up and being healthy. Can I play with my kids, or are my bones too achy? Can I actually get around, or am I too overweight? Is there something in there that I can control, that I can change, that I can do? So physical side of things, it really is. It's as simple as that. And the way that I look at it is that can I actually do? And on the do side of things, we can all do something. Okay, that's the biggest piece of that puzzle. I love what Nike did. Nike just recently changed. They had their mission statement was along the lines of something about being the best for every athlete. And then it just recently added an asterisk, and it said that if you have a body, you're an athlete. And I love the thought process of that, because they've changed their viewpoint on even what they're looking at athletics, and they're saying that we all have the capacity to do. And so that's what I'm looking at in that. Again, mental health, that's going to be about your growth. So what are you doing to educate yourself? What are you doing to make your mind stronger? What are you doing to help yourself to be able to grow? Our mind is a very powerful weapon. It is a very powerful tool. It's very powerful everything. Our mind is extremely powerful, right? And I do separate a little bit of that mental power, right? That growth in my mindset, that learning capacity. That's what you want to think about in that, versus the emotional side of things. And when I think about the emotional side of things, it's a little bit different. That's kind of getting into the psychology of our brain, right? Where am I feeling right now? And these are two different spaces. Business is real simple. We can look at our business balance and really understand like what's happening in my world as far as it pertains to business. This is usually going to hit into the vein of goals. Most of the times we're going to hit into the vein of goals for our business side of things. That's the easiest thing to attach to when we're measuring the health of it. Going over here to the spiritual side of things, right? So spiritual, and this doesn't necessarily mean did you take yourself to church like Hosier told you to do. This is about that spiritual moment. So this is not a judgment on what your belief systems are. It's a judgment on, are you, if there is that belief system, finding yourself to be fulfilled? Because I think we all agree, I'm a Christian and I have no bones about saying that. And I believe that in God and all those things, right? I'm a believer in that space. And so to be a believer in that space means that I should have a significant balance or counterbalance in my life for that. So on the spiritual side of things, what are you doing on that spiritual vein, right? To be able to make sure that this is something that's feeding you, because there is that higher power moment, I think, for all of us. And in all honesty, even if you can I could argue that for any of your belief systems, that there's a higher power in that involvement that you've got to be able to tap into, if that is in your belief system, okay? We just got to have that conversation. It's okay to speak on that. And then family. And here's the biggest thing on family. Your family can be your direct family, like my daughter, my son, my wife, my brother, my sister, my brother-in-law, like those family members. That doesn't necessarily mean who's in your household, right? There is a balance that has to happen with family. There's a tribe moment, right? Even if we are alone, there are some of us in this world, and even listening or piping in now, that would say, like, man, in my life, I actually have like no one. It's not entirely true. There is someone, and there's the opportunity to have someone's, okay? I think that's the biggest thing. If you look at the world, there's opportunities for us to have someone's. And so these are the main world areas in which I look at. Now, you could go and Google life balance or life counterbalance, and you're going to see people list a ton of things. Like, there's a ton of stuff that people would be looking at to measure. For me personally, these are the main things that I'm looking at. And I find that if I have counterbalance in this world, then I'm moving in the right direction, right? I have a general overall health in my world. I am content. I am happy. I have freedom in that, okay? So when I'm looking at this, it's real simple. I did not make this up. I am borrowing a lot of different pieces and putting them together, and that's how I really look into this world. This is how I found balance. If I were to draw these circles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I drew 5 circles, and it's a really terrible drawing just because. Forgive me. And I want to sit there and I want to look at, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being, man, things are not so good as far as me being healthy in this space. This is a health check, right? Health measurement. 5 is, man, I am excited. You get teeth, you get a full-fledged teeth smile. And obviously everything in between is kind of subjective. How would you measure yourself in your world right now? So if I were going through and physically and I was measuring myself, and I don't mind doing this, like if I was measuring myself, I'm going to give myself, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If this were a pie, that piece of the pie in my life I'm actually doing pretty well. I feel pretty good about what's happening in my world. So I'm our 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'm a 4, and I color in my 4. Okay. Mentally, this is something that I'm very big on. I actually am doing this for myself all the time. This is all the way. Like, I think I do this better than most anything else that I do right now. Emotionally, to be honest with you, emotionally, I don't know that I've dealt with a lot of what's happening in this world right now. I've thought about it, I've talked about it, but I don't know that I've done anything to really get into a space of understanding where my health check is on it. So my honest moment with everybody is like, you know what, I'm only going to give myself the 3. Okay. Business. I don't know if you've met me, but I go 100 miles an hour all day long on the business pool. Spiritually, like, gosh, I'm only giving myself a 3 right now. There's a lot that I could be doing for my family. There's a lot that I could be doing to help, like, find some balance in that. Family, I'm going to give myself a 4 on the family. It's not perfect by no means, and there's plenty of room to grow, but I'm measuring this based off of, like, what's happening right now and, like, what's happening in my world right now. Like, I'm being very intentional about making sure that family is the big piece of the puzzle. I'm being intentional about fixing that rhythm, right? The new rhythm for being able to work at home, all of this chaos. So if I looked at this and I were to draw this out, if this were a wheel spinning in the world, my wheel would look like that. It's not balanced. It's not counterbalanced. And so when I look at my world, here's one of the biggest things that I'm looking at right now. A lot of us are figuring out how to consume to be able to fix the business block. I've watched a lot of the business block and the family block. I've been watching these 2 blocks most of all happening right now. People are trying to figure out what can we do right now to make a great and just adjustment in this world. And yet, if we really measured out our whole counterbalanced side of things, we would find that we've got some bigger issues in some other spaces. And here's why I think this works. At least this is how it works for me. In my world, if I'm looking at this and I've measured myself out, I've got time to do 3 things every single day. I can work on personal stuff, I can work on business stuff, or I can sleep. I can work on personal stuff, business stuff, or I can sleep. We are all have the same 24 hours in that process. If I have the same 24 hours to do this, well then, if I'm spending a lot of time here in this box, and I don't want to sacrifice some sleep, and I don't want to sacrifice my personal, I could certainly find a way to steal 30 minutes from my business box. This may go down a level. I don't know. We'll see. But I could certainly spend that 30 minutes over here or over here. What if I started taking that and I started journaling every single day for 30 minutes? I may have only borrowed a little bit of time, but it was a sacrifice. It was a challenged sacrifice to make sure that I could, I'm going to make that another color, so that I could really affect the change in this wheel. Okay. And so for me, it's all about this counterbalance moment of looking at my life and understanding where do I actually need to consume to make sure that I can bring all of this into a little bit closer to moving in the way it's supposed to move. It will never be perfect. That's the biggest thing, guys, that I want to make sure we're sharing today. This will never be perfect, ever. It's never going to be perfect. It 100% will never be perfect. But we can continue to move in that direction. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room on this check, this health check balance, is this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm not going to put all the words in there just for the sake of visualizing it. So this is now our wheel. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, this is our wheel. For some of you, you're looking at yourself going, I'm a 1 here, 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 and I'm a 1 here. Okay, that's the elephant in the room. Some of us are overly optimistic, and you think that you're at 5s. I would encourage you, if you're brave enough, if you think that you're the opposite end of this, right? If you think you're all out here, like, man, I'm out here on everything. you believe that, do something dangerous. All right, I'm going to ask you to do something dangerous. Go ask your spouse, a significant other, or a best friend, hey, measure me on this. Where do you think I sit on that scale? Because people are very reflective. People are a window into who we are. Those who spend the most time with, they're a window into who we really are. Going back to this, if you believe that you're all ones, or you're all twos, or you're all threes, or maybe you have one that's spiked and everything else is low, this may be in balance, but it's not growing. There's something significant about the idea of growing. So I may be in balance, but if I'm in balance and everything is at a 1, I don't actually have life satisfaction. So this tends to be another idea of this tends to be a bit of a life satisfaction scale. And so how do we begin to tip this? How do we begin to tip the scale, right? How do we start to bring that counterbalance? Because it happens the same way in which we take our 1s to our 5s in any of these spaces. It's the same way in which we take and bring counterbalance into this space, right? The way we affect this is the same way we affect just a low end scale on everything. Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you. And this is 100% not my, this is not mine. This is an idea from who I learned from and how I bring this into space. Each of these blocks, so we're going to go back to this. So let me just write physical, okay, mental, emotional, I'm going to go business, spiritual, family. If I were looking at these, I would want to know the very first thing, if I need to affect one of the changes. So going back to this, if one of these blocks is huge and I need to affect the counterbalance, I want to think about what is the one thing, right? And there's a book called The One Thing, and it's about this concept. What is the one thing that I could do that would immediately raise the temperature of that block? What's the one thing I could do that would immediately raise the temperature of what's happening in this space, okay? So if I'm really looking at it and I think to myself, what's the one thing in each of these blocks? Mine actually in this emotional stage that I gave a second ago is very true. Right now, and I'm taking my own medicine and I'm writing notes and Crystal's going to hold me accountable, is that right now for the emotional balance in my life, I need to start journaling again. If I sacrifice 30 minutes out of my business section, which is doing so well, I should be able to sacrifice some time to be able to do this journaling thing. I need to do a journaling moment. I don't know that another 30 minutes would affect this to be better. I don't know if 30 minutes would take away from what's happening there. But I do know that 30 minutes put into this block could easily affect this to go up a block or two. And so now my 3 in an emotional state can now be a 5 very simply in time by adding 30 minutes every single day to journal and to make sure that I'm expressing these things so I can get them out, okay? For us, we've got to be able to understand what's the one thing that will get us towards balance. We want to move towards balance. The myth of balance, we want to move towards it. And the way we do that is, in all honesty, in counterbalance. It is a sacrifice from one of these spaces. I may be spinning this plate really, really, really well. All of a sudden, this plate is down to a 0, a 1. This plate is all wibbly wobbly. Well, if I'm spinning my physical plate and let's say I got time sacrifice into that, I'm doing, 10 hours a week, I'm doing some sort of physical gym activity, but my spiritual game has dropped. I may need to figure out, well, how can I steal 30 minutes, an hour out of this space a week and put it into my spiritual side of things? Some of it can be really simple to go into the idea of on the spiritual side of things, and this is it. Like, it's about that one thing, and it can be overly simple to make sure you can get back into balance. But gosh, I could all the online stuff I can consume online, but I would say put something into action. We all know the right thing to do. Put something into action. Start praying. Start meditating. Start doing something that moves you in the direction of that spiritual gain. Okay. This is what I look at when I think about right now in our world. We can't only be consuming things from the space where we find the biggest need if we don't understand the full capacity of our counterbalance, okay? So our unaware brain goes, my biggest need right now is family because now I'm being tossed into the family situation at a heightened level. Well, your family bucket could have been actually doing really well, and this could not have a whole lot of challenges, right? We've got to do a health check on all of these areas. And once we have that health check, we know where we have to move into next, okay? Once we understand what this looks like, and we can see for our own eyes, we can understand the tangible nature of it, we might not be finding another 1 hour long webinar that we can do about business. We might actually spend our time better watching or listening to that 1 hour podcast by some of the people who are brilliant in bringing those kind of spiritual messages to us, right? Does anybody have any questions on this? So the first thing is a health check. The second thing is to be able to get back to the one thing that'll bring you to balance, right? The one thing in each of these spaces that will bring you to balance. It's a one thing in each of these spaces. It's not just a one thing in general. It's a one thing in each of these spaces that can bring me closer towards a balance. So I want to open up any questions. You can leave comments if you're watching me live. I don't think anybody is, except for Corey. Corey's in there. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you. If you have a question, if you have a comment, in the other side as well, Crystal, if there's anybody type anything, let me know. I won't wait too long just because I want to keep moving on, but I will pause for a second in case there's anybody who wants to offer anything up. And I can save my coffee. Awesome. Does this make sense, guys?
Yeah, it's good.
I know I draw 100 miles an hour, so let me make a clean page for you guys, for those of you who are taking notes. And again, I'm going to send some stuff out. Oh, thank you. Thanks, guys. I am going to send some. Oh, hey, so I guess I just can't see the new Facebook, the way it blocks out my screen. I can't see who all's online. Hi, Bubba. This is now I'm getting filled up. Okay. So again, you look at the physical. Look at the mental. You're looking at the emotional. You're looking at the business. You're looking at the spiritual. And you're looking at the family, okay? The very first thing we're going to do is be able to do the health check and grade ourselves. That says health check. 1 to 5. We're doing really well. It's a subjective thing, but you grade yourself based on this. And at that point, then I'm very optimistic, and I think I'm awesome. And so I actually have to do a really I actually have to have a spot check. Ellen, I guarantee you at some point will watch this and have a conversation with me about what I said I was doing. It's good. It's good to have accountability in that. And then wherever I'm at in this space, to be able to get it back to balance is to be able to understand what's the one thing. Gosh, I'm trying to make this simple. What's the one thing that you could do to bring counterbalance back into your space? And counterbalance is about borrowing from another space, right? If I'm going to counterbalance something, I've got to steal a little bit from this. Annette, great question. 1 is bad. 1 is I'm not doing so good. 5 is I'm knocking it out of the park. Okay, great question. So the one thing that I can do to counterbalance, how can I borrow from some of the space where I might be doing really well, some of the time that I don't realize that I'm overly sacrificing into a space that's doing really well? A lot of you guys, and especially my real estate agents that are out there, my real estate professionals that are watching, I'm telling you right now, if you're a real estate professional, you are overbalanced here. Most of you are way overbalanced here. You need to start borrowing some of this time. You need to start putting it into the space where you're lacking. Okay, I'm just being honest with you. Okay, all right. So when we get into this and we grade all of this, again, we get to see. I'm going to go back just because it looks like somebody popped in late. So Annette, if you were to grade yourself, and I'll send you guys this graphic, how does your wheel look? Is your wheel balanced or out of balance in all the other areas? Okay. So the third thing, the last thing that I'll tell you is you've got to be able to establish a baseline for each. Most of us have never really thought about this process. And this is, again, another borrowed. There's a book called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind. Code of the Extraordinary, says that, mind. Okay. This is a concept that I borrowed from this book. It's a very unconventional book, and some of you guys won't love it. I'm just going to be honest with you. Some of you guys will not love it. I like it for the way in which it gives practical steps to be able to do counterbalance. I don't agree with all the stuff the dude says because he's a little kooky in some of the areas, but I think it's good to have people who are kooky in this world. All right. Establishing a baseline. This is one of the things that we missed the ball on, is to understand the baseline. We don't know when we're out of balance because we haven't established a baseline. Right now, we should easily be able to have that self-reflective moment and go into, I know I'm off on A, B, and C. And the reason why I know I'm off is because my baseline is off. And so if you think about it, one of the things that he says is that he should be able to, at any point for his physical health, be able to drop, and I think it's like do 50 push-ups in a row. Like he should be able to drop, if he's been healthy, he's been consistent on his health bucket, and he's filling this up to have balance or counterbalance, he should be able to drop at any point and do 50 push-ups. And so if he's starting to feel a little bit awkward, a little bit off, hit the ground and see if he can hit that. And if he can't, immediately make sure that where am I spending my time? Again, want to bring this back to the puzzle. So I can do personal stuff, I can do business stuff, or I can sleep. Those are my categories for time. I got 24 hours. So if that is where I'm hitting, and I'm spending 15 hours in my business bucket, I need to bring balance back into that space, right? And so that's one of the things that we've got to be able to understand, is that we need to establish a baseline, and we are going to borrow. If there's a counterbalance moment, we are always going to be borrowing from somebody to be able to find where that growth happens. Miss Cynthia, I'm going to mute you if that's okay. We've got to be able to find the balance. The way we find the balance is to understand where we're sitting. And the way we understand where we're sitting is to be able to have a baseline from the very get-go. If you think about this, a lot of us run our businesses really, really well. I'm just going to tell you that. I know a lot of you guys, and most of you who are listening, most of you will pop in, even if you own a job in a W-2 fashion, even if you're like at the lowest end of the totem pole, a lot of you guys I know and I'm connected with, you do your job really, really excellently, but you measure everything in your job. You know how the system fits into your job. You know how and when and what is off. You're taking measurements of it all the time. It's the same exact thing. We're just managing our life in the same way in which we would manage a business. And so what are your baselines? You can easily think about physically a baseline. I will tell you right now, I am not in a mode anymore to go do marathons. I'm not in a mode anymore to go run and do all. I don't want to be at a gym. I don't know if you look at me, but like, gosh, I'm a small guy. I just don't, this is my measure, I just don't want to look like a 12-year-old in my body. Like, I'm okay being a small dude. I just don't want to look like a 12-year-old. And so for me, I don't want to be strong. I don't want to be a beast. The only thing for me is, could I get on my rower and can I row for 30 minutes and not be winded? I want to get on my rower and row for 30 minutes and not be winded. So to be able to get to that space, I've got to have the consistency of that baseline. So in all honesty, my baseline is where my balance is happening physically. And then eating. Eating is a big baseline for me. So a good spot check for me is when potato chips start to fall into a regular diet. If I start to see potato chips happening more because I'm a sucker for potato chips, I got to cut it out. So it's real easy on the physical side to find some balance in that space. Mentally, what's your mental spot check? What is your mental spot check? If you're going to create a baseline for your mental growth, okay? This is a weird space because some of us have never thought about this, right? We've never thought about this. So it may take you a little bit to be able to consider what a baseline might be. But what would your baseline be for your mental growth? What do you need to consume? How do you need to consume? What do you need in your world to be able to have a mental balance that's growing, okay? I don't really have a good mental baseline. I'll be honest with you, because I do a lot. I think my mental baselines ends up being in the rears. So I don't have a good one right now. So this is me being honest. This is the teacher eating his own words. I don't have a good one for this. I'll just be frank with you. I don't have a good one for this. Okay. This one, I kind of alluded to what this one is. For me, an emotional baseline is on the journal side. How many days have lapsed since my last journal? That's my emotional baseline. Journaling every day. It's going to be easy for me to go, even just for a little word, a little tagline or something. I know that I'm off when I haven't had the ability to express myself. Obviously, because then I end up shaving my hair or cutting my hair on Facebook because it's fun. Just kidding. That's not the reason. It is the reason. I'm so emotional. Just kidding. Maybe. Nobody knows if I'm serious or not right now. All right. Emotional. My baseline is journal. How many days have lapsed before I've actually put words to a piece of paper? That's a baseline for me. Business. Business, I have accountability through a coach for my baseline on that. So the good thing is that my baseline for my business is the fact that I have a huge array of accountability for that. Some of us don't, right? Some of us don't have coaches. Some of us don't have accountability. So how do you know when you've overbalanced or underbalanced your life on business? What is your baseline for that? I think there is a really easy number. Usually this is going to tend to live in our goals. And so we're going to be able to probably see in our goals for our business, our baseline is more than likely found in some array in that space. Okay. Spiritually, this is one gosh. For me personally, baseline here usually happens in prayer. It's the baseline of that is I recognize when I'm off in prayer, right? That's it. I recognize when I'm off in prayer. And that starts to show up a lot because if you believe, should you believe, when you believe, like the spiritual side of things is that we are spiritual beings. And so if God, who says it, and I have the Holy Spirit inside of me, it's going to be a gut check in and of itself, which we don't have to split hairs and start having a conversation about theology. However, I do believe, like, in this space, for me, it's prayer. For some of you guys, it may be meditation. For some of you guys, it could be a million different things. The idea of it, though, is like, where is your baseline for when I'm off? I know I'm off because that one element is off. That's the one element that's off that I could kick back into gear. And then on family baseline, that's a tough one. It really is. Because family, here's the reason why family stuff is tough. Family has to have consistency. And right now, many of us are going back into our homes to create a new rhythm, and that's okay because this is kind of where we're at right now. Family has to be able to create consistency. When you've lost consistency with your family, it's hard to get consistency back. So it's all about momentum. That's one space where I would encourage you to protect everything you can. So find whatever that baseline is. Find where that consistency is. Like, baseline could be family dinners. Baseline could be family walks. And fight to keep that thing constant. Fight to keep that thing consistent. Because if that's the one thing that's the most important and that's the way y'all's families connect, it's got to be a purposeful element. Then now you have a real easy way to get back to balance. Now, when you're out of balance, one of the coolest things that you can do with family is surprising your family is always a fun thing to do. And so, like, gosh, what's fun about family is as soon as it's off balance, it's easy to be in balance by doing something spontaneous. That's what I love about it. Bob Goff, book called Love Does. He talks about this kind of spontaneity in our life, this whimsy in our life to be able to do things with our family that creates this urge of togetherness. Okay. So Love Does, Bob Goff is the book that I would suggest if you want to be able to really think about family in a way in which spontaneity builds the relationships and grows you guys in a common bond. So, okay. I know that some of this is a little vague and some of this is real specific. I can't be the prescription of any of it. My job, my goal today is just to make sure that we're aware that there are moments in our life that are bigger than what we measure. And we're only measuring a lot of times, for most of us, in 2 or 3 of these spaces at any given point. A lot of us will ignore our feelings because it's difficult to get into our feelings, and we can't ignore it. We've got to look at the whole picture, all of the plates that we're spinning. I may have to give attention to one before it falls off the rod the whole time. So we're spinning the plates of our life balance to be able to find satisfaction in what's happening in our world. The way we do that is to actually have a health check, have a mental health check, have a emotional, spiritual, have a family health check. You've got to check all these spaces. Once you get them into check and you know where you're at, right? Knowing is understanding what we can do to be able to move forward. Once I know where I'm at, what is the one thing that I can effectively put back into my world, right? That I can borrow from one of these plates that are spinning, the time, the energy. I can borrow from one of those spaces to be able to put it back into this. And now you'll find that as that gets into balance, you're probably going to be missing balance on one of these other areas, which means we just always have to be in the game of counterbalance. And in all honesty, this is why so many of us are tired. This is why so many of us are busy. And yet, if I got into a consistency of at least understanding this, it will be easier to put systems in place so that then I don't fall off in any of the areas too much. I may go from a 5 to a 4, but I'll never hit a 2. we do this by paying attention to it. We just haven't done a whole lot to pay attention to it. Last thing I would say is just to establish those baselines and make sure that those are the things that you're finding to be, I guess, the triggers to know when I'm out of balance versus just collapsing. Most of us know when we're out of balance because we collapse. Okay, thanks, bro. Dude, seriously. Bob Goff, I'm encouraging any of you guys to go watch what Bob Goff does. That guy has figured out a lot of things. Now, I think it is because of the spiritual side of things. Like, dude is, he loves Jesus and he tells everybody about it in a way that is just extravagant because I think he sacrifices himself a lot to care for people and to love people. So Love Does. I 100% read Love Does. Code of the Extraordinary Mind, another book that I would encourage you guys to be able to get if you want to be able to find some of this stuff in balance. The One Thing, and that is by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. So The One Thing, Code of the Extraordinary Mind, Love Does. Those are the books that I mentioned. I would highly encourage you guys. None of this is rocket science and none of this is my idea. This is just my moment to be able to make sure in a space where I know that I have influence to help you understand it's okay. You don't have to be perfect, and stop putting the pressure on yourself for that. You can come into this world, though, and to begin to create systems so that now you know where you're missing those elements where you feel off, and you can directly affect it with activity, okay? If any of you guys had it, like, I know that Crystal, you're managing over on the Google Meet side of things. I'm over here on Facebook for the live. If any of you guys have any questions, comments, you're welcome to type them, but that's what I have to say today. That's all I got. I'm not that fancy. I'm not that smart. No comments from Bubba on that comment.